Welcome, everyone, and thanks for coming out to the Saskatchewan Air Cadet League training sessions. This session is for the Squadron Sponsoring Civilian Committee Chair, or the SSC Chair, as we call them. So first off, we want to talk about the job of the SSC Chair and so forth. The job of the SSC Chair all too often falls to the person who'll do it because no one else wants to. Nothing against these volunteers, but if you think about it, why put somebody in a position just because no one else will? So what are the traits of a good SSC Chair? A good SSC Chair is someone who is enthusiastic about the Air Cadet program. Cadets who have, they're energetic, they work well in a team setting, they're a good communicator, they're organized, they're empathetic, and they're committed, and they actually enjoy people. Parents of cadets who have done well in the program are usually good candidates for the job. They usually understand the program and can provide all youth a good program. A good candidate for the position is someone who will work well in a team setting, because a big part of the job is relationship building. They will build relationships with the executive, they build relationships with the SSC members, and they build relationship with the SSC officers, the squadron officers, I should say. A good SSC Chair is able to communicate their thoughts and ideas well. It's one thing to provide the information, but being able to sell the information or communicate it well is a big trait, a good trait for the SSC Chair. They're empathetic, they're a good listener, having the ability to relate to what the person is saying and feeling. Because as we spoke about working as a team member and working as a communicator, you need to be able to understand what the person is all about. A good SSC Chair genuinely likes people because this is definitely a people job. There's a lot of work to it, but it's essentially working as a leader of people. The key aspect is to enjoy what you're doing and who you're doing it with. That's a very good trait. And again, the more enthusiastic the volunteer is one who engages and engages people around them. So one of the big traits of a good SSC Chair is someone who actually enjoys the program, somebody who is excited about it and can get other people excited about it. So those are the traits of the SSC Chair, a good SSC Chair. So now we're going to talk about the responsibility of the SSC Chair. Again, you're a team leader. You're responsible for helping develop the yearly operational plan. You're a delegator, you're a facilitator, and you're an official liaison between the CO and the SSC. So the chair, the chairperson of the SSC is definitely a leadership position. And as a good leader, what you do try to do is you try to bring in trusted volunteers to work with you on the executive. So if there's a person who you're grooming to be chair, make sure that they haven't, you've had a chance to talk to them and see who they would also want to work with. The chair works with the SSC and the squadron officers to develop the squadron strategic plan. The strategic plan is the overall goal of what the squadron wants to accomplish. Versus the operational plan, which is your yearly plan that you want to do. The chair is usually ideally a third or fourth year cadet parent. You don't want to put a first year cadet parent into the chair responsibilities, although at times it does occur. But ideally someone who's had some chance to understand the cadet program does make a better chairperson because they understand more of the entire program. And again, as I said, they work with the executive committee to develop the yearly operational plan. And a yearly operational plan is basically, as when we're talking about it in the overall, it's just your month by month program of what you want to get accomplished with the SFC and the cadet program. The chair understands that the volunteers who they're working with, and they try to put the people in proper positions to exceed. So that is where you're the delegator. You're finding the best fit for each of the volunteers. And each volunteer will have something to offer. You just have to figure out what is best for them. And a good chair meets regularly with the CO and updates the operational plan as opportunities arise. I've always said that the relationship between the SSC chair and the commanding officer is it's your second marriage, because you can actually work very, very closely with that person. And you need to talk with the officers, and you need to talk to the CO, because the CO is the representative of the officers, and they'll give you a lot of the what needs to happen information ahead of time. So it's important that you do that. So how do you do it? And again, the big part of what you need to do is you need to be able to have some decent time management skills, because most SSC chairs are very busy people. They're busy either in their personal lives or work lives, or a combination of both. And they genuinely want to help, and time management is a big part of what needs to happen. You need to be organized. You need to take the operational plan and break it down on a month-by-month basis. And again, the whole idea of taking small bites of a big pie type of thing. And you take, okay, what do I need to do now? You move it back far enough to ensure that it can get done. You need to have you need to regularly meet with both your executive and your SSC. Basically that is, if you're going to have 2 meetings a month with your SSC, one with the SSC, you should have one with your executive about 2 weeks ahead of that. And again, as I said, it's essential to build in lead time. A chair can quickly get overwhelmed if they don't use their time wisely. The important thing to remember is to work with the plan set out, but not be so rigid that opportunities that arise can't be taken advantage of. For example, if the CO, when you meet with the CO and they say, hey, we have an opportunity to do this project that when we put together our plan, can we support it? Can you support it as the SSC? And if it makes sense, you say, yeah, you take it to your executive and you take it to the SSC, and you make those things happen. You need to use your executive. As an SSC chair, you don't need to do everything, but you do need to break it up into bits that everybody can do stuff. Again, plan to have an executive meeting 1 to 2 weeks in advance of your SSC meeting to hash out all the details of the programs that are going to be coming up. For example, I use the effective speaking. If you know that you've got the effective speaking program, if you look, okay, nationally the competition is June, provincially the competition is in April, zones are in March. Well, we need to have ours in February, and we need to train our cadets. We need to start training our cadets, in December, January type of thing. So you take it from the end result and you move it back to what you want to do. So you build in that lead time. And then on a monthly basis, you need to, okay, what do I need to have done? Well, in December, you need to get the information out to the cadets, through the CO dismissal notes, and through your executive, and through your communication channels that you have through your secretary. See, and then you do that. And then what do I need to do in January? Well, I need to book a night for the competition at the squadron level. So what night can we do that? Again, you hash it out with the chair and let your executive, let the chair and the CO, and you work it out to make it happen. So, and you just keep working all the way through the program. So break it down in manageable chunks. Your committee chairs can definitely help what you need to get done. You need to talk. You need to contact the committee chairs the week of before your meeting. Find out what's going on in their program, if there's any support they need. The vice chair, who is a good person to also help with this. You can break the job at half with them so that they can be contacting some essential committees and you contact the other. Then you meet together and you hash it out before your meeting. And again, when you're contacting your committee chairs about how their programs are going, be there to offer the support that's needed, whether it's financial resources or if they need more human resources to make the process work. Make sure that you're there to get that done for them. You don't have to do the work, but you have to put the resources in place to make it happen. Again, divide up the work. Often a SSC chair is someone who's come through the program, and they can do the job probably quicker than they when they give it to a different volunteer. It's important to remember at that point, let them do their job. You don't have to do everything for them. You just have to provide the resources for them to make it happen. Not everybody will do it the way you would do it as chair, but you will you'll do them a big service by offering them support, offering them advice, but not doing it for them. Again, the idea of managing versus micromanaging. Micromanaging is checking every detail. Managing is, oh, is it happening? There is a difference. So in order to get the job done, you really need to determine what needs to get done and when it needs to happen, and build your operational plan from that idea. So how should you organize your committee? Well, again, your constitution will give you the framework of what you as a chair need to organize your members to do with your executive and so forth. Again, it should give your makeup of your executive. It should give you when your planning cycle's in, what kind of committees you're running. So in most cases, you're going to run an executive committee, and with the SSC chairs, committee chairs doing the work. The executive will be if you think of it in a business setting, would be the middle management, or I should say, will be the management, and your SSC committee chairs would be the middle management. They're the ones who are getting the projects done with the membership and so forth. And you as the executive are there to monitor it and offer the assistance and advice and resources needed to make it occur. The key to organizing your committee is to plan where you want to be. So you take a look where you are right now. Okay, here we have our squadron. We are currently a squadron of X number of cadets. We have this many officers. We have this amount of money in the bank. Where do we want to get to? Okay, so we want to have more cadets. We want to have more. We need to have more officers. We need to have more finances. So you take stock where you are and you decide where you want to go with that. So for example, if you have 20 cadets right now and you want to move up 30, well, how do we do that? Well, first off, we need to make sure we have our officers in place to provide a good program to make that happen. So then how do we do that? Well, we need to recruit officers. How do we do that? Well, we need to make sure that we have a good pool of volunteers. So you can see how you keep backing up to all the steps that you need to actually get to where you want to go to. So again, when you're doing with your planning, you go through where you want to go and how you're going to get there. And when your plans, you need to do, again, as I talked, you need to set up two types of plans. You need to do your long-term plan. Where do you want to go, say, in 5 years as an organization or as a squadron, versus what do you need to do this year? So using the analogy of just the size of the squadron, so for example, if you say you're a squadron of 20 and you want to double your size of your squadron, well, you may want to do that over a 5-year period versus a 1-year period, because with a big growth requires you to have the resources to make it in place. So you move back, you make sure you have the officers in place, you make sure you have the financials in place, You make sure you have the right size of a facility to make that happen. But on a yearly basis, you say, okay, look, we want to try to get 5 more cadets this year. So what do we need to do? Do we have the resources? Can we make it happen? And what do we need to do to make it happen? Again, once you have your plan, you determine what your committees need and what you can do with the squadron to provide them provide them with the resources to make it happen. And it's important when you're assigning your committee chairs that you've actually done your homework with these people and finding out what they can potentially do and what they potentially want to do. Because if you have a good fit between the committee, the person running the committee, and what they're doing, and what they like to do, chances are you're giving them more chance to succeed. So that comes down to the question, who do you use to make these things happen? And again, we're talking about volunteers, which is our human resource. We're fitting the right volunteers into the right job. There's an old adage that money makes the world go round. I like to say that it's the volunteer who makes the world go round. Human resources in the real world, human resources in a real world work environment or volunteers in a nonprofit are essential to moving the organizational forward. All of the money in the world can't get the job done if you don't have the people to do it. How do you get a volunteer to want the job? Well, that becomes the sales job of the SSC chair. Basically, you want to find the person who is most likely to want to or able to do that job. The example of finding someone who likes to work with financial stuff, that's a great person to be your treasurer. Now, it's also careful to remember that if they do that job in their everyday life, they may not want to do that in their volunteer life. So don't just assume that if you have an accountant in the area and they're on your committee, that they're automatically going to want to be the treasurer. They may be able to help out, but they may not want to do that. They might want to work in a different part of the program. So don't make any assumptions on who can do what. So who can volunteer for the SSC? Parents, grandparents, siblings, guardians, interested community members, essentially any adult that is trustworthy. Again, that's why we screen people. So how do you identify what your volunteers can and are able to do? Well, first you'll need to educate your volunteers the benefits of volunteering with the Cadet program. And it might sound a little interesting because you'd think that a volunteer, what are their benefits? But most people who volunteer intrinsically are provided with skills or experiences that they don't normally get in their everyday life. They can provide a better program for the youth, and they can give themselves a resume booster, and they learn new skills that they might be able to use in their everyday life. Every volunteer has the potential to give something back to the program. But what you need to do, you'll need to do a volunteer database. So basically, you'll talk to all your potential volunteers and find out, for example, who they are. There's a series of questions you can ask and stuff. And I know in non-COVID times, you can talk to them in person. But in these sessions, even if you have to call them or have an online meeting with them, they're hard to reach. But if you take the initiative and talk to them up front and ask them a series of questions, that it'll help you give a database for which you find out who they are. So basically, who they are, what do they do in their real lives, are they, professional workers? Are they, do they work nights? Do they work days? Those kind of things. What do they like to do in their spare time? Sometimes you may find that you'll find a volunteer who is a skilled carpenter or a skilled craftsman that might be able to assist you on projects you didn't even think about. You also need to ask them what form of communication they prefer. Do they like to talk on the phone? Do they like email? Do they like text? I mean, 10 years ago, if you'd have told me that my preferred communication with my kids were text, I would say you're crazy, but that's how kids text. That's how kids communicate. So everybody communicates in different levels. And the other question is you ask us, how much time over a year can they donate to the squadron? Can they donate an hour a month, which would be 12 hours? And again, if you use it over a larger time frame and you use a number that is very manageable, most volunteers will say, oh yeah, I can give you that back. So now you know who your volunteers, what they can do, what they do, what they like to do, and how much time they have to do it. So for example, with myself, I'm an avid sports fan. I ref football. I enjoy sports. I ski. If you want me to volunteer, you attach anything to do with sports with me, and generally I'm going to volunteer. So that's the idea. So you find out what makes people tick, and that's what you talk to them about, and then you set them up in the right position. So once you have your potential volunteers and the jobs that you need to do, you need to start delegating the jobs out. And I just do want to back up here slightly and stuff. So when we're talking about the jobs and where do you get the jobs from? Well, that comes from your plan and from your committees and what needs to be done. And you can have certain parts of a committee job that need to happen and stuff, and you attach timelines to it, and you attach what needs to be done overall, so that if for example, that effective speaking takes a total of 15 hours over the year, and you have a volunteer who is into Toastmasters, and this is something they really like to do, well, this is a perfect person for them, because they say, yeah, I can donate a couple hours a month to the squadron kind of thing. So you need to start delegating the jobs out to the right people to the right positions. You can either do it in one-on-one conversations or during meetings. Some people are more comfortable in a one-on-one setting. Now, whether you do that online with one of our Google Meets or a Zoom program, whatever it takes to talk to them, it's good to have face-to-face contact when you do them. So you find out what they want to do, and you're talking to them. So you fit the best person that will fill the task that you need to do. For example, a person who likes bingos might be a good person you set up with your bingo committee. Now, someone who likes cross-country skiing might be a good person to let the CO know that here's a potential resource for the biathlon program. So you look at their profile, and you find the best fit for each volunteers that they can do. The task and the job that you give them, if it matches what they want to do, you have more chances for success. It's important to remember that not all volunteers want to be leaders, but equally, it's equally important to remember that not all volunteers just want to be workers. So, when you're talking with your volunteers and you're setting up who they are and what they are, really, take that little extra time and find out, what makes them tick and what would they like to try differently. So it's essential that when you're actually identifying your volunteer and you're giving them a job, and you give them a job description with the time commits included, it's very important. Again, as I said, if you don't give the job, if you don't give the idea of the volunteer how much time it's going to take, when you ask them to do the job, they're not likely going to want to do the job if they think it's all encompassing, versus finding out that, oh, okay, it's going to be a couple hours a month for 4 months. Oh, I can do that type of thing. So it's important to give the timelines. Another good way to do it is to give the job give the volunteer an option of it of a job as an option or versus an option out. When I say that, you can give a chance, if you have two jobs that are similar and you need a volunteer to do it, you can talk to the volunteers who are most likely best fit from your database and say, hey, I have this job or this job. Which one would you like to do? Versus I have this job. Would you like to do it? So you can see the option of having an or is a good way for a person to either opt out to what they consider the easier job or the more job that they want to take versus an option of I'm out. Look, I need you to do one of these two jobs. Which one can you do versus I need you to do a job. Here it is, or no type of thing. So give them an option or versus an option out. And then once you have the volunteer committed to the job, ensure that there is support from the executive committee to assist when needed to help and move the program forward. So basically you're getting them, okay, here's all your support, here's what you can do. Is there anything else you need? Also let the volunteer know that, there are no dumb questions. If they don't feel comfortable asking in a group setting, ensure that you have a way that they can ask you privately about some questions that they have. And once they finish their job, ensure that you thank them publicly. Volunteers don't volunteer to get recognition, but if they don't get recognized, they will be more hesitant to volunteer in the future. Okay, and again, awards don't need to be large or to be appreciated. For example, if, a Tim Hortons coffee card might be a great gift for someone who enjoys coffee as a thank you for the job they did on example on a fundraising project. And don't look at it as an expense because, okay, it might cost you $10 for a coffee card. Look at it as an investment in the next job that these volunteers will do for you. Again, speaking of awards though, if you have volunteers who are really stepping up and you do want to find ways to recognize them on a more global scale, we both have provincial and national awards that can go a long way in creating a culture of positivity and that an organization that appreciates what the work of the volunteers. So we have our provincial awards, which are due at the end of September, or our national awards, which are due in our office here by March 1st. These forms are available through our website, and or if you have any questions, there's contact information at the end of this. So now you have your strategic plan and you have your yearly operational plan and you have your key players in place. What do you do? Well, you need to communicate or broadcast your plan. The plan needs to be shared with all members of the SSC, including the officers on the side on the officer side, so that everybody knows what you plan as a squad to get done for the year. This gets you buy-in, and the key person to use for communicating is your secretary. In the other session, there is a secretary roles and responsibilities, but the communication is one of the tools of what the secretary needs to do. Nothing can happen in a vacuum. The more people that know what you want to do, and they're more educated about what will happen, the more they might be able to help and have a better picture of what needs to be done. A good example is, say the SSC states that it needs to raise $10,000 with no explanation as to why or how it will be accomplished. Just saying that is pretty much a recipe for disaster, but letting the members know of the SSC know that you need to raise $10,000 for which we'll be covering the following items: rent, cadet trip, training aids, and so forth. And it'll be accomplished by running the following fundraising: a Christmas hamper draw, a 50-50 draw, a dinner and silent auction, and a series of bingos. Lets everybody know, okay, here's the expenditures, here's what it's going to be spent on, here's why it's important, and here's what we're going to do to make it happen. And here's what you as a volunteer can do. So you need to communicate who, what, when, where, and why of what you're trying to do. Again, and the more information you can provide, the more education you provide, the more likely you'll have people buying into what needs to get done. Again, use your secretary to keep the communication message going out to as many mediums as you have. That can be, if you have a private Facebook page or minutes or text or whichever medium that you use, make sure that they're done. Also, regularly update at the SSC meetings. It helps keep the volunteer on task and track. So if you're letting people know, hey, this is where our goals are, here's where we're at, the people can get motivated or say, hey, we need to start working harder to make this happen. You can also take advantage of the Google Drive system we have for each of the squadrons as a communication and as an electronic communication device for the squadrons, as can be a substantial repository for information for them. And again, we'll show that at the inside. And again, that's a little bit more set up on the secretary training session. Again, when you know your volunteers, you'll know which way they like to communicate. Use those communication methods as required. So it's important when you're running communication, you're also doing a review of your plans and your status at the SSC meeting. It doesn't have to be a full review of where you want to go, but you can kind of update what your plan is, where you're at, and where you need to keep going. This can be in the fundraising aspect. This can be in the size of the squadron or of your overall plan. It's nice to have a quick little update, and it can be 30 seconds a minute at your meetings, but you do that and you continue to have people understand your plan and where you're going with it at all times. Again, use digital tools to your advantage. In this modern day world, our digital communication devices and options are varied, so use them and make them work as best you can. Again, we talked about the Google Drive and so forth. To quickly talk a little bit about conflict management, because we have when you have people working together that have various backgrounds that they're coming from, we're going to look at the same issue, and you can see it in different lights. And it's important to remember that as a chair, you need to keep a finger on what's going on with your SSC and with your committees and stuff. If there is an issue that's brewing, you need to know when to step in, and the time to step in is when it starts to affect the operation of the squadron of the SSC. What you need to do is you need to recognize the problem, what the problem really is. Sometimes it might not be what you think it is, but as you step in and you bring the two parties together and you talk about it, you can find out what the real problem is. And then you can come up with a strategy to make it work out. You come up with a resolution. This is not an easy thing to do. And sometimes it's important to bring in an outside person, such as your area director, or to be there to listen and to come up with a good plan to move forward. So you have a meeting with the affected parties, and you come up with you can come up with a plan together to make it work so that you as a squadron SSC can move forward. You don't want to let it become the problem fester and create more problems than in the end. I'll use an example. When I first started this job, there was a squadron in the eastern side of the province that the CO and the SSC chair were oil and water. And they were, it was getting to the point that the squadron was becoming very dysfunctional. I was asked by the area director to come in with them. So we came in and we met with the officers and the executive. We basically gave them a half hour to just talk out what the problems were. And ironically, they were both saying the same things. They just couldn't see it. And so after half an hour, we basically say, who's prepared to move on from here or who's prepared to walk away? Well, they weren't prepared to walk away. So we gave him some strategies to to work, and the big one was communication. And in most cases, in a volunteer organization, communication is going to be the biggest conflict. People aren't communicating the way they need to. So we gave him some skill, gave him some things they could do. We gave him some options, and so this was in April. In the following October, when we had our AGM, they came up arm in arm and basically said that was the best thing you could ever done. We're so much more effective as a squadron and stuff because of it. So don't be afraid to step in, but don't jump in too early. Is I guess the lesson on that one. We're now going to run on to how to run an effective meeting. So one of the toughest tasks as you as the SSC chair is to run a meeting that is both informative, effective, and efficient. The reality is most people hate or dislike meetings. Why? It's because we usually go over the same thing and nothing ever gets decided. As a chair, you can change this perception and culture by coming up with some strategies to make it work. First off, you as a chair need to know what you want to accomplish. You need to know when to cut off the bait. You need to know how long the meeting should run. And there's a couple other tasks to make it happen. So first off, you need to plan your meeting out in 10 to 15 minute time frames. So your first 10 minutes of the meeting, you want to have introductions and any formalities like approving the minutes, approving the agenda, and introductions. It's very important to welcome the new people of the SSC group into the group. If you have a new member present, have everyone introduce themselves and get them to do something silly like let them know their favorite animal or a quirky fact about themselves. And as chair, you'll need to do this first to people, make them feel comfortable. These icebreaker type of things might be the only time a new member speaks at the meeting for the first time, but they'll feel part of the group and they'd be more likely to contribute when they have a chance. So it's really important when you're running a meetings that you, especially with new people, you welcome them into your session or your meeting. The second 10 minutes, you deal with the financial reports, projections, and bill payments, because that's an important part of what you as the squadron do. And it's important. And it's important to know where your finances are, where your financial projections are, and what bills need to be paid to make them happen. The third 10 minutes, you have your various committee meeting updates. And if you've spoken to your committee chairs in advance, you'll know what needs to be discussed, and so you can direct the conversation. For example, if you know that the curling committee needs to book ice, you can talk to the committee chair prior to the week and let them know that they can check on ice availability, and they can bring that to the meeting. So the decision is not whether to book ice, it's when to book the ice and what dates. The fourth 10 minutes, you need to have the CO come in and present what the officers need to present. And again, it's important that the CO come in and talk to all of the SSC members, and this is an optimal time for the CO to do that. And then the fifth 10 minutes, this is where you deal with upcoming projects, mail, and things that you're. And this is where you can also reinforce your plan for and what you need to do to adjust to make things continue on. Again, this is where you'll find that if your CO was talking about, okay, hey, we have an option to go to a hockey game and we've been given free tickets and stuff. Can we do this? You as the so when the CO does it at their time, so then when you have the new meeting part, you can make your decisions and move forward from there. And then the last 10 minutes is business from the floor, and this can be things that members have come up with and have options with stuff, and that's where you let them bring that if they haven't brought that ahead of time on the agenda. So you can see if you can use this template, it's a quick and easy way to do that. And so you want to try to run your meeting about an hour at the max. 50 minutes is good. And if you break it into time slots, you'll know if you're running ahead or behind time. So if you actually have your watch in front of you and stuff, just on the time when you're reading it, you can actually see where you're at. So it's a good tool to use. But the question you have is, but where is the fun in running a meeting that's just like that? Well, the important thing is after the meeting. You then have a little social time after the meeting, and that's where it's difficult um, in in COVID times when you're online. But you still have that option to get into a social room, and you put everybody up on in the you can see their face, and you just start talking. Most volunteers get drawn into social circles, and if you make the SSC meeting a source of fun for the volunteer, they're more likely to come out to the meetings, and they're more likely because if they know they can socialize with people and find interesting new people to be involved with, that's why people want to get involved in organizations, and that's why they want to volunteer. So don't be afraid to have those fun times, after you get your business done. In non-COVID times, you actually have like a coffee, you have a coffee and treat time afterwards, where you talk about it. And this is where you as a chair can also get some pre-work done, finding volunteers for your upcoming jobs and so forth. So don't be afraid to have a bit of fun with their committees and have fun. I know there was a small committee that or a small squadron that had phenomenal committee attendance, because they would always, after their meetings, they would have coffee and treats, and every month a different family was required to bring the treats. They ranked the treats, and then the person who had the highest rank over the year, they got like a supper out with for two people. So it was kind of a fun way to do things. And don't be afraid to spend a little bit of money to have a bit of fun with what you're doing. Again, it is public funds. You're not going to be spending thousands of dollars on something, but buying a $10 gift card or buying a couple raffle tickets that you give to a volunteer and stuff isn't a bad thing to do. Just remember that that after meeting social aspect can be as important. And you'll find that if the culture is that you're going to have fun at the end of the meeting, people stay on task with the meeting, and then they have their fun afterwards. And then once you're done your meeting, it's important to get the information that's critical from that meeting out as quick as possible. Having minutes that are going out a month after the fact don't do anything. So it's important to come up with a time frame that when the minutes will be out. And if there is mission information that's critical, that's when you might have to use your Facebook page, or you might have to use text or stuff to get that information out to people. You can use the dismissal notes on the cadet side that they take home, but always assume that you're going to go directly to the volunteer versus going through the cadet themselves. Okay, some of the ways we can communicate, we have our Google accounts. We have a SKACL Gmail account, and this is where you as a chair, we have one separate drive list for the chair, one for the secretaries, one for the treasurers, one for the screening, and one for vice chairs. We've set those up for the squadrons to use as a tool. We also have our Google Drive, which each squadron has their own Google Drive. And I'll have a link to how to get onto those. And you can set that as your communication tool that everybody goes to. They know to find information where you post your minutes, you post whatever you need to do on those drives. Again, it allows for documentation storage as well as collaboration with the squadron. So you have the ability to manage your Google Drives and who's allowed to go onto it. Again, this training is a little bit more based on the secretary, but you just want to let you know that it's there. So you can actually, we do have with our Google accounts, you can set up, for example, 107 volunteers and stuff, and you can set them up with an email system and the whole bit. We have a technical guy, Jay Shaw, who can help you out with anything that you need to do there. But thank you for volunteering. You as chairs have a difficult role, but it can be a very rewarding role. And we also wanted to know where you to come for the information. We'll be having all of our training sessions online on our various communicating devices, including our SKACL YouTube page, our Google Drive, as well as our SSC volunteering. Or just send an email to myself at info@skacl.ca, or give us a call at 780-9285 or toll free at 1-888-383-9285. Again, thank you for volunteering, and we shall look forward to the question and answer session coming up.